The courtroom buzzes with a charged energy, the kind that comes after a seismic shift. Ethan's sudden interruption has left everyone in stunned silence, their eyes fixed on him with a mixture of disbelief and awe. His words, the truth that has been buried for so long, hang heavy in the air, and the room seems to hold its breath. The judge's gavel had crashed down in an attempt to regain control, but the ripple of Ethan's revelation continues to reverberate, shaking the very foundation of the trial. People murmur in hushed tones, their whispers filling the space with an electricity that refuses to fade. The prosecutor's face is a mask of fury, and the defense attorney is struggling to mask the shock that has taken root in their eyes. The courtroom is still reeling from what just happened, and yet there's a sense of something undeniable in the air, a recognition that what Ethan has done can never be undone. As the tension in the room escalates, Ethan sits, his heart pounding in his chest, the weight of his decision crashing down on him. For years, he had lived in the shadows, carrying the burden of a lie that had been suffocating him. And now, in a single, bold moment, he had finally spoken the truth. His words had cut through the lies like a blade, but as they settled in, a new kind of fear began to take hold of him. The truth was out, but the consequences were yet to come. Ethan's mind races as he sits in that chair, the eyes of the courtroom still locked on him. His courage, once so pure in its intent, now feels heavy with the unknown. What would happen next? Would he be punished for his defiance, or would the truth lead to a kind of redemption he hadn't yet dared to imagine? The relief of finally unburdening himself is quickly eclipsed by the fear of what lay ahead. He has exposed the cracks in a system that was built to protect its own, cracks that now threaten to swallow him whole. The weight of his decision presses on him, and for the first time, he realizes just how much he has risked. The world he once knew, the life he had carefully constructed around the lie, is now shattered. There is no going back, no undoing the moment that will forever change everything. Ethan's heart beats in his throat, but despite the fear gnawing at him, there's a flicker of something else, something raw and powerful. The truth has been unleashed, and for better or for worse, Ethan has stepped into a new reality. The judge stands, the gavel raised once more, but this time, it's not just to call for order. The weight of Ethan's words has placed the entire room on the edge of something much bigger, something no one is ready to face just yet. How will the judge respond? How will the rest of the courtroom react? The moment of reckoning is at hand, and Ethan knows that whatever happens next will define his life forever. The air in the courtroom is thick with tension. As the prosecution dismisses Ethan's testimony, their skepticism palpable. The defense, however, isn't so quick to discard the boy's words. They huddle together, strategizing, eyes darting back and forth, as they process the significance of what Ethan has said. His revelation, so unexpected and unflinching, may have opened a door to something much larger, something they can no longer ignore. The name Amanda Green echoes in their minds, and as they delve deeper into the lead Ethan has provided, a chilling picture begins to form. Amanda Green, a name previously buried in the background, now stands at the forefront of the investigation. The defense team works tirelessly, tracing every possible connection between Amanda and Alyssa's murder. Their research uncovers startling details, suspicious phone records, accounts of unreported meetings, and a web of circumstantial evidence that points to Amanda's involvement. But it's the potential motive that sends chills down their spines. Could it be that Amanda's personal life, her tangled relationships, or perhaps even jealousy, played a role in Alyssa's death. The more they dig, the clearer it becomes that the prosecutor's dismissal of Ethan's testimony might have been premature. As the defense digs in, law enforcement begins to take notice. The police investigation, which had once seemed stagnant, suddenly shifts focus. Amanda, once just another name in the case, is now under intense scrutiny. Authorities issue a search warrant for her home, and the tension reaches a boiling point as officers swarm her property, combing through her personal belongings with precision. The search feels invasive, and Amanda's life is exposed piece by piece. Letters, documents, items once considered private now open to the public eye. Every new discovery sends shockwaves through the investigation, the walls around Amanda closing in with every passing moment. Outside of the investigation, Ethan's courage has not gone unnoticed. The whispers in the courtroom have started to shift, and though many still regard him as an outsider, his bravery in speaking the truth has earned him a measure of respect. His words, once dismissed as the ramblings of a frightened boy, are now seen as a catalyst for the case's evolution. The once cynical defense team now acknowledges his pivotal role in uncovering the truth, and even the judge, who had initially seemed indifferent, now takes a closer, more serious look at Ethan. But Ethan feels the weight of being in the spotlight. Though his courage is beginning to be recognized, he still carries the heavy burden of his actions. His role in the investigation, his refusal to be silenced, have set the stage for the next chapter of the trial. Yet as he sits in the courtroom, his eyes flicking nervously between the defense team and the judge, he feels like a spectator in his own story. He never asked for this attention, never imagined his words would carry so much weight, and now, as Amanda's world unravels, he wonders if he will ever feel truly safe in the aftermath of his decision. The investigation into Amanda Green intensifies, and the focus has shifted in a way that no one could have predicted. Ethan's words have planted the seed of doubt, and now the search for the truth has taken on a new urgency. The stakes are higher than ever, and with every passing day the courtroom and the world waits for the next move in this high-stakes game of justice. The tension in the courtroom rises to a suffocating level as the investigation continues to unfold. As law enforcement sifts through Amanda Green's personal belongings, they stumble upon a hidden piece of evidence, Amanda's diary. What initially seemed like an innocuous, personal account of daily life quickly turns into something far darker. Page after page, Amanda's twisted thoughts spill out, revealing a calculated and chilling plan that no one could have anticipated. The entries paint a picture of a woman consumed by jealousy and bitterness, a woman who had woven a sinister plot to frame Lucas for her sister's murder. Each word, each detail in the diary uncovers more about Amanda's manipulation and deceit. The diary describes how she lured Alyssa to the park that night, how she meticulously crafted the scene to implicate Lucas, and how she set the stage for the entire tragedy. The more the investigators read, the clearer it becomes. Amanda didn't just kill her sister out of some spontaneous outburst, but with a cold, deliberate motive, all in an effort to destroy the life of the man she blamed for her own twisted desires. As the investigation progresses, the courtroom waits with bated breath. The defense, now armed with this explosive new evidence, presents it to the judge, and the prosecution has no choice but to acknowledge what they had long hoped to avoid. The weight of the truth is undeniable. Amanda's diary, a physical manifestation of her dark intentions, becomes the cornerstone of the defense's case. The moment the diary is introduced into the courtroom, a thick silence falls. The pages, stained with Amanda's venomous thoughts, are read aloud by the defense attorney. The words echo through the courtroom like a hammer striking stone, each revelation more damning than the last. As Amanda's carefully orchestrated plan is laid bare, the prosecution's defense of her falters. The damning evidence is too overwhelming to ignore. There is no plausible explanation, no room for doubt. Amanda Green, once a figure of innocence in the eyes of many, is now revealed for who she truly is, the architect of a sister's death and the manipulator of an innocent man's fate. The courtroom is stunned into silence. No one can believe the enormity of what has just been revealed. The jury, once uncertain, now sits in shocked stillness, their minds processing the full scale of Amanda's cruelty. The faces of the onlookers mirror the disbelief in the air as the weight of the truth sinks in. Ethan, still sitting at the edge of the courtroom, feels a strange mix of vindication and unease. He had known in his heart that the truth would eventually surface, but seeing it unfold in such a brutal, undeniable way leaves him shaken. The journey he started, the truth he uncovered, now stands as the foundation upon which this entire case will be built. Yet, as the courtroom grapples with the shock of Amanda's revelation, Ethan's role in this has never felt more real. He had sparked the investigation, uncovered the first clue, and now the entire world was learning the full extent of what had happened that night. Amanda, sitting in the defendant's chair, is no longer the quiet figure she once was. Her face, pale and drawn, betrays the terror she feels as the walls close in around her. She had thought she could control the narrative, manipulate the truth, and pin the blame on Lucas. But now, as the truth about Alyssa's murder is finally revealed, Amanda's own deceit has shattered her carefully constructed facade. The prosecution, left with little to stand on, looks helpless as the evidence mounts. The courtroom knows what it must now face: the tragic and heart-wrenching reality of a sister's betrayal, a twisted mind capable of framing an innocent man, and a story that no one could have imagined. The truth is out, and the silence in the courtroom speaks volumes. The courtroom, once thick with uncertainty, erupts into chaos as Amanda Green is escorted in, handcuffed and flanked by law enforcement officers. The air is electric with disbelief, relief, and a strange sense of justice finally being served. The truth that had been so carefully hidden, the web of lies and manipulation that had been spun around the tragedy of Alyssa's murder, is now fully exposed. The weight of it presses down on everyone in the room, but it is Ethan who feels its enormity the most. He sits in his seat, his chest tight, as the reality of the situation sinks in. Amanda, once poised and composed, now appears broken. The confident demeanor she once held has evaporated, leaving only a desperate, hollow expression. As she's led into the courtroom, every pair of eyes is on her, some filled with shock, others with revulsion. But it is Ethan's eyes that Amanda locks onto first. There is no escaping the intensity of that gaze, the one that had seen through her lies, the one that had sparked the chain of events that led to her arrest. For a brief moment, the room seems to freeze as the two share a charged, silent exchange. Amanda's lips curl into a sneer, but her eyes burn with an intensity that sends a shiver through Ethan. He can feel the coldness in her gaze, the simmering hatred she holds for him. And in that instant, he knows that despite the relief of having uncovered the truth, his journey is far from over. Amanda, now exposed and facing the consequences of her actions, is not finished yet. As Amanda is led away, her anger becomes palpable. Her steps are heavier, more deliberate as she turns her head one last time to face Ethan. Her voice, low and venomous, slips through the air, just loud enough for him to hear. "You'll regret this," she whispers, her words laced with threats. The bitterness of her defeat now transformed into a dangerous kind of rage. The sound of her voice feels like ice in his veins, and Ethan can't help but shudder, even though he knows deep down that he did the right thing. But as she's escorted out, the weight of the moment hangs over him. Amanda's glare burns into him, long after she's been taken out of sight, a lingering reminder of the kind of danger that now follows him. The courtroom may have witnessed the fall of a manipulative murderer, but for Ethan, this is just the beginning of a psychological battle that no one in the room fully understands. The space between them may have grown, but the conflict is far from over. Amanda's hatred and bitterness are not easily extinguished, and her threat is a warning Ethan cannot ignore. In the quiet aftermath of the courtroom chaos, as the judge calls for order and the room slowly settles, Ethan feels the weight of what he's just stepped into. The battle for justice has been won, but the fight for his own safety and peace of mind is only beginning. Ethan may have exposed Amanda's dark secret, but now, as he sits there, the seed of fear has been planted. He has made an enemy of someone who will stop at nothing to see him suffer. And as Amanda disappears from the courtroom, the psychological war between the two has just begun, one that will follow Ethan long after the trial ends. The question now is, how far will Amanda go to take him down? And how far will Ethan be willing to go to ensure he's done the right thing, no matter the cost? The courtroom is quieter now, the tension having ebbed away with the conclusion of the trial. But the weight of the day lingers in the air. Judge Foster, standing tall behind the bench, looks down at Ethan, his expression serious yet filled with an unspoken respect. The room, still reverberating from the seismic shift that Ethan's testimony had caused, is finally at a moment of pause. "Ethan Matthews," the judge begins, his voice steady and measured. "I want to publicly acknowledge your bravery, your courage in speaking the truth, in standing up when it would have been easier to remain silent, has saved an innocent man's life. You have done something many would not have had the strength to do." The words, though simple, hit Ethan harder than he expected. His gaze flickers up, meeting the judge's, and for the first time he feels the true weight of his actions. He never sought recognition or praise. In his mind, he was simply doing what needed to be done. But hearing the judge, an authoritative figure, a man of the law, acknowledge his role in the case, Ethan feels a shift inside himself. The quiet boy who had always held back, who had lived in the shadows of his own fear, now sees the world differently. He has stepped into the light, and there is no going back. Lucas Hart, now exonerated and freed from the chains of a wrongful accusation, stands next to Ethan. The relief in his eyes is palpable, but it is the gratitude that fills his voice when he speaks that strikes Ethan deeply. "I owe you everything," Lucas says, his voice thick with emotion. "If it wasn't for you, I'd still be in that cell, facing charges I didn't deserve. You're the reason I'm free." Ethan, caught off guard by the sincerity in Lucas's eyes, simply nods. He doesn't see himself as a hero, nor does he want to be. He's just a kid who did what was right. But standing there, shoulder to shoulder with Lucas, he begins to understand the gravity of his actions. The consequences of his decision to speak out are far-reaching, far more significant than he had ever imagined. He didn't just change Lucas's life, he changed his own. As the courtroom empties and the finality of the trial settles in, Ethan feels a strange sense of peace. He never expected this journey to lead him to a place of self-realization, but through the storm of fear, confusion, and uncertainty, he has emerged stronger. He knows now that standing up for what is right, no matter the cost, is more important than hiding in the comfort of silence. The path of truth may be difficult, but it is the one that ultimately brings the greatest reward. Back in town, the whispers about Ethan begin to shift. Once a quiet, overlooked boy, he is now seen as someone who made a difference, a catalyst for change even. The people who once passed by him without a second glance now recognize the bravery in his eyes, the quiet strength that pushed him to do what others couldn't or wouldn't. His classmates, once indifferent to his presence, now nod in respect when they see him. Even the adults who once dismissed him as just another face in the crowd now give him a nod of approval when their paths cross. Ethan feels the weight of their gazes, but rather than shrinking away, he stands taller. His growth through this experience isn't just about the shift in how others see him. It's about how he sees himself. He has learned that doing the right thing isn't always easy, and it doesn't always come with recognition or accolades. Sometimes it comes with fear, with doubt, with consequences he may not fully understand. But in the end, it's worth it, because standing up for truth, for justice, and for others is what matters most. Ethan Matthews, once an unnoticed boy in the background, now carries the mantle of someone who changed the course of a life, and in doing so, found the courage to change his own. His journey may have started with fear, but it ends with a strength that will carry him far beyond the courtroom. Ethan's actions have shaken the very foundation of the town, leaving a profound sense of unease in its wake. The trial, which had seemed like a simple case, has exposed cracks in the justice system that no one could ignore. What had seemed like a clear-cut case, an open and shut conviction, was built on assumptions, stereotypes, and biases that, when carefully examined, crumbled under the weight of the truth. Ethan's courage in speaking out has forced everyone to confront uncomfortable realities. The justice system, designed to protect the innocent, is shown to be just as vulnerable to human error and prejudice as anything else. The wrongful conviction of Lucas Hart was a glaring example of how easily the system can fail. Lucas, a man who had been labeled guilty by the very community that was supposed to protect him, had become the victim of assumptions. A combination of circumstantial evidence, biases about his background, and a rush to judgment led to a disastrous and unfair outcome. The people of the town had not bothered to dig deeper, to question the narrative that had been presented to them. In their eyes, Lucas was guilty long before the trial even began. Now, as the dust settles and the truth comes to light, the weight of that failure is evident. The town, once so certain of Lucas's guilt, is forced to reckon with the reality that they were wrong. The faces of those who had once whispered in judgment now turn red with embarrassment and shame. The small, tight-knit community had believed in the righteousness of their own assumptions, only to be blindsided by the revelation that their convictions were built on nothing more than fear, prejudice, and carelessness. In the wake of the trial, there is an uneasy silence that lingers among the townspeople. Conversations that once revolved around the certainty of Lucas's guilt now shift to deeper, more uncomfortable topics. They begin to question how they treat those who don't fit the mold, those who are different or seen as outsiders. How had they allowed their biases to cloud their judgment? How had they failed to question the evidence, to look beyond their assumptions? This collective reckoning isn't easy, but it's necessary. The town begins to shift in its perspective, slowly at first, but undeniably. They start to recognize that justice is not a simple thing. It requires diligence, it requires patience, and, most importantly, it requires the willingness to listen to the voices that have been silenced or ignored. It isn't enough to simply go through the motions of a trial or rely on preconceived notions. True justice demands a deeper, more honest examination of the facts and the willingness to admit when the system has failed. The people of the town, once so sure of their own righteousness, now face the uncomfortable truth of their own flaws. It's a difficult pill to swallow, but one that is necessary for growth. And while this painful process of reassessment begins, there's a growing sense that change is on the horizon. The town's approach to justice, once rigid and unforgiving, will never be the same. They've learned the hard way that assumptions can be deadly, that bias can have real, devastating consequences, and that no one should be judged based on anything but the truth. Ethan's bravery, his willingness to stand up when no one else would, has ignited a spark of transformation in the town. It's a quiet revolution, one that begins with an acknowledgement of past wrongs and a commitment to doing better. The town's understanding of justice will forever be shaped by the case, and as they move forward, they carry with them the painful lessons learned through their own failure. They are no longer content to simply accept the surface-level truth. They are beginning to question everything, to demand more, and to insist on a justice system that truly serves all, not just those who fit the expected mold. The town will never be the same. Neither will the people who call it home. The road ahead may be uncertain, but the hope is that it will lead to a future where truth, fairness, and understanding reign. The courtroom doors swing open, and Ethan steps out into the bright sunlight, his heart still heavy with the weight of what he's just been through. He had never anticipated his life would be so irrevocably altered by one decision, but as he walks alongside his family, he knows that everything has changed. The case is over. The truth has been revealed, and Lucas has been exonerated. But as the crowd of onlookers begins to disperse, there's no denying that the true weight of the moment lies in the quiet space between Ethan's family and him. His parents, who had once been anxious, protective, and fearful of the consequences of his actions, now look at him with a new kind of respect, one that has grown from pride, not fear. They had worried that Ethan would be overwhelmed by the storm he had stirred, that his bravery would cost him in ways they couldn't yet understand. But today, as they walk beside him, their hearts swell with pride. They see the courage in their son, not just the boy they had raised, but the young man who had faced a difficult truth and stood tall despite the risks. His mother, whose worried eyes had once followed him at every turn, now offers a soft smile, her voice thick with emotion as she places a hand on his shoulder. "We're so proud of you, Ethan," she says, her voice steady but filled with love. His father, too, looks at him with newfound admiration. The weight of the fear that had once held them back from fully supporting him has shifted. They now see the strength in Ethan's conviction, the depth of his character. "You did what needed to be done," his father adds, his voice laced with pride, "and I'm proud to call you my son." Ethan nods, his gaze focused ahead, the weight of their words heavy on his heart. Though their pride fills him with warmth, he still doesn't fully understand the magnitude of his actions. He never set out to become a hero, never sought recognition or accolades for doing what was simply right. To him, it was never about seeking glory. It was about doing the right thing, even when the world around him urged him to stay silent. But as he hears his parents' words, he feels the shift within himself. He's not the same person he was when the trial started. He has grown, not just in the eyes of his family, but in his own eyes. As they walk away from the courthouse, the town watches. The whispers, once full of doubt and judgment, now carry a different tone. The people, who had once seen him as nothing more than a quiet, overlooked boy, now regard him with new respect. They recognize the strength of character that Ethan displayed in the face of fear, the courage it took to speak the truth when it would have been easier to remain silent. The respect is palpable, but so is the realization that Ethan's actions have sparked a change in the town. He may not have set out to become the town's hero, but in telling the truth, he has become the catalyst for transformation. Ethan may not see himself as anything extraordinary, but his actions will resonate for years to come. The town, once certain of its own righteousness, has now begun to change. Its people, who had judged too quickly, now reflect on the lessons they've learned through Ethan's journey. His truth has forced them to confront their own biases and assumptions, and it will shape the way they view justice moving forward. Ethan has done something profound, something that will leave a mark on the town long after the trial has faded into the past. As he walks with his family, the weight of the future ahead still feels uncertain. He doesn't know what comes next, whether his newfound respect will carry over into his everyday life, or if the town will soon forget the lessons learned in the wake of his courage. But for now, as he looks at his parents, at the people around him, he understands that his life will never be the same. He may not have sought out this path, but by telling the truth, by standing up for what was right, he has changed everything. Ethan's journey is far from over, but for the first time he understands that his courage has created a legacy that will endure. The world may be uncertain, but the power of truth, the strength in standing up for justice, will be something he carries with him for the rest of his life. The future is unwritten, but Ethan knows one thing for sure. No matter what happens next, he will never regret the decision he made. As he leaves the courthouse with his family, the town watches, and Ethan, though still unsure of what comes next, walks forward with the quiet certainty that by speaking the truth, he has already changed everything. As Ethan steps away from the courthouse, his footsteps echo softly on the pavement, blending with the low murmur of the crowd that lingers behind him. The world around him feels different now, still, yet charged with an energy that is both new and familiar. He never sought to change the world. He was just a quiet, ordinary kid who happened to find himself in the center of an extraordinary situation. But in the end, it was his voice, the quietest voice in the room, that proved to be the catalyst for something far bigger than he ever imagined. The final moments of the trial, the words that had slipped out of his mouth are still fresh in his mind, but Ethan doesn't feel like a hero. He doesn't feel special or elevated by what he did. All he did was tell the truth, a truth that had been buried under layers of fear, prejudice, and assumptions. He never expected the truth to unravel the tangled mess of lies or to create a ripple of change in a town that had always followed its own narrow path. But in that single moment of courage, his quiet voice became the force that shifted the course of the trial and the course of his life. As the sun begins to set, casting a soft, golden glow over the town, Ethan's journey becomes a silent testament to the power of truth. It's not always loud. It's not always dramatic. But truth, when it is spoken, has a power all its own. Ethan's decision to stand up, to speak out when others were too afraid, showed the town something profound. Even the smallest, quietest voice can ignite change when it is spoken in the right moment. The lasting impact of Ethan's decision isn't just in the conviction of a murderer, or the exoneration of an innocent man, or even in the shift in the way the town sees him. The true power of his actions lies in the understanding that one voice, when driven by courage and truth, can alter the course of justice. That voice, however small it may seem in the grand scheme of things, has the power to reach farther than anyone expects, to break down walls that once seemed unshakable, and to bring about change when it's needed the most. As Ethan looks up at the sky, the future stretches out before him, uncertain yet full of potential. He doesn't know what comes next. But in that moment, as he walks quietly with his family, he understands one thing more clearly than ever before. Truth isn't always loud or grand. It doesn't always demand attention. Sometimes it is simply a whisper that refuses to be ignored, a voice that will not be silenced, and a conviction that will not bend in the face of fear. In the end, Ethan's voice, small and unassuming, changed everything. And that truth, the one he shared when no one else would, will remain the strongest force of all.